It is exactly 8:43 a.m. News and views until our media this Monday morning. We move on with our interviews, and we're going to be looking at quite a serious issue now. A developer is building a massive office block for Amazon.com at the River Club. They're dumping hundreds of tons of concrete into a sacred river. And of course, activists are saying no building on sacred Khoi and San land. To talk to us about this very sensitive issue is Julie Eccles. She is an activist and volunteer for Save Our Sacred Lands. A very good morning to you, Julie. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julie. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to your
Lovely.
listeners.
Lovely to have you here. How serious is this issue? And is it a situation of the Khoi and the San and other such minority groups almost being a forgotten people and their rights? Are big corporates and possibly even government trampling on their rights and their sacred beliefs?
I think you've encapsulated it very well. It's really heartbreaking and uh, awful to see how our society is still so colonial. That from 1652, when the Dutch arrived, there was a systematic ethnic cleansing and erasure of Khoi culture. And yet, Khoi people show us every day that they're still so resilient and proud of their culture. So it is exactly what you say. And we consider this project to be an act of colonialism. And in fact, Khoi people consider this to be an act of ethnocide and epistemicide, because it is the destruction of something which is fundamental to their identity. So it's incredibly serious and incredibly sensitive.
Are
Um,
the Khoi and the San people, we refer to them very loosely as the Khoi San, but these are two distinctly different peoples, and there's a whole lot more other smaller such communities, and they're very integral to this part of the country because I also understand that this part of the country is steeped deep in all of their religious rituals, and also the environment, the plant life there is important to their belief system and their existence, so to speak.
Again, you've encapsulated it very, very well. Yes, the Khoi and San are two distinct groups, and within those groups, they are also subgroups. So there was an anthropologist who was also a genocidal maniac who lumped the two together to form this term Khoi San, and actually, it is the Khoi and the San. But there are sort of collective struggles that affect both groups. In terms of the actual land and the connection with nature, I'm a little bit inadequate to speak to that. But what I've learned is that Khoi and San people really have a deep, deep connection with nature that is inseparable from their identity. And this area in particular is part of a green lung. It's a very ecologically sensitive area. There's all kinds of plant and animal life that are indigenous to that area. And the Khoi and San, it's impossible to separate that from their spirituality and their what we call indigenous knowledge systems, or IKS, which, so let's just say someone who is Christian, you have certain holy sites. Someone who's Muslim, there's certain holy sites. This is a holy site, a sacred site for Khoi and San people, and it's impossible to separate it from the sense of space and place. It really is like the Al-Aqsa of Khoi people, especially the
Wow.
Peninsular Khoi. Yes, or it could
Wow.
be, you could say it's like the Notre Dame of the French
Mm,
people, or
mm.
and here you have people just simply building on it like it's nothing, and all of these objections through the years that have come up. It's like the city and the developer have just steamrolled over it. So we, as a collective of activists who are standing with the Khoi and the Khoi leaders themselves, we'll fight this tooth and nail. It's completely it's a horror. It's a nightmare.
How did this development come to be, Julie? And it's just as well that we have activists like yourselves making a noise, and a big enough noise for this development to stop. How did it come to be, and how far are you as activists down the line to stop this development from happening?
So there've been a number of court cases. One of the applicants in these court cases has been the Goring Icona, which is a Khoi group, and the Khoi group that controlled what we now know as Cape Town for millennia. There's been really a lot of ongoing court cases. And funny enough, last year an interdict was granted against the building. That was granted in March, and it was a historic ruling that for the first time perhaps in history recognized, or at least in colonial history, recognized the fundamental rights of Khoi and San people cannot be superseded by commercial interests. The developer stands to make hundreds of millions in profit off this building. But that was a historic ruling. And funny enough, the developers didn't care. They actually started building in violation of that interdict. And soon they, with their powerful lawyers and their millions that they have to spend, they were appealing that and bringing all kinds of malicious lawfare against the Khoi leaders who had actually won that interdict. So it's been a very, very steep uphill battle. But you know what? The truth is on our side, and the truth is on the side of the Khoi and San. And for that reason, we continue to fight tooth and nail. And there'll be some. It remains to be seen what will happen next.
What's very sad about all of this is here we are talking about sacred land. We're talking about vast tracts of land in the Western Cape that already has been developed, which rightfully belong to these indigenous people, the Khoi and the San people. And yet we as South Africans, third generation or whatever, have been so brainwashed by the colonialists that we don't even see these people for who they are in their true identity. They're just lumped and accepted as a group of colored people. And I'm sure that is not what they want. They want to be identified for who they are, either Khoi or San or one of the other minority groups. Are there plans afoot perhaps to reclaim even their identity and how they're addressed?
Well, I think what is incredible to see is that there are Khoi and San revivalist movements, that are growing. And a growing number of people who are branded with this term colored are challenging this and saying that they reject this, that this is not who they are. It's an apartheid era term, and it's a very violent term because it actually erases so much of the nuance and the Africanness and the true identity of people, and tries to turn them into a subhuman kind of understanding. So it's a really wonderful and very heartening to see these revivalist movements that are people who are reclaiming their identity. And this struggle is very much, I think, a part of that. And what we see is also that with the site and with the fighting for the site, it's an affirmation or a reclaiming of that identity, and the Africanness of that identity. So yes, I can only I can only agree with you.
As we speak about this, Julie, what comes to my mind as well is the story and the fight for rights, survival, and identity of the Red Indians in America, in the United States, because they have had similar fights on their hands. They've been also wanting to be recognized for who they are. They are the true Native Americans. They also have ongoing fights about sacred land. They've been dumped into what is called reserves in certain parts of the states. And this story really sounds like that story being repeated here in Africa. And I hope and pray that you as activists do win this fight, because it's about people's survival, it's about their identity, it's about their self-respect, is it not?
100%, and I think that's a very interesting that you brought that up. It is absolutely a parallel, and it's we recognize not adequately, but we recognize that a genocide took place in the USA and Northern America, probably the worst in the world. Here, a genocide also took place against the Cape San. And this question of land, I mean, all of that land, as you say, was under the custodianship of Khoi and San people. And it was when title deeds were first introduced by the Dutch that the Khoi and San were displaced, and they were introduced in that very area, the very place where this is being built. Blood was shed by the Khoi, who were defending their land against the Dutch, who were taking cutting them off from their life-giving river, stealing their cattle, and committing atrocities against them. And it's this resistance that also has layers of memory for Khoi and San people who've been resisting this for 360 years ever since. And it was here that Jan van Riebeeck stole this land, and colonialism in a manner fanned out with wars of resistance all across our continent, displacing Khoi and San people all across this part of the world. So this has a deep memory for people, and an entanglement for all of us as South Africans and Southern Africans, that we can say that everything that went wrong here in a way started there. And that's why the Khoi and San are actually calling for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for colonialism itself, which would then actually start to bring about the recognition of these atrocities. And in understanding and actually acknowledging these atrocities, that I think would have a massively restorative effect on the identity aspect that we're talking about, the answering of the question, like, of who am I for any given person.
My final two questions before we wrap up, Julie, is let's look at the issue around which area we are talking about specifically as far as this development is concerned. I do know that when we talk about the Khoi and the San and all of these other minority groups, it does encompass the entire Kalahari, Western Cape, Eastern Cape, etc. But which area are we talking about specifically? Question number one. And your deep knowledge and interest in the issues of the Khoi and the San people. When, how did this come about?
Okay, well, I mean, to answer the first question, this is a piece of land that's in observatory. It's the meeting of two rivers, the confluence of two rivers, and it's known as the River Club. I believe that the Khoi called it Kamerori Kayes, which means the place where the stars gather. So that's the area in question. It's also a floodplain, which means that they had to do all kinds of interesting ways to get the building approvals. They had to, be creative with it. So that's where it's situated. It's next to Observatory in Cape Town. And then in terms of my interest in the campaign, so I joined this struggle in 2021. It had already been going for a number of years, obviously. And I actually, I'm a graphic designer. And so I offered to design some posters. And as soon as I learned about what was going on, I just could never, I could never not be involved. It's just so, I think this is important for all people, whether we're Khoi, San, white, black, Nguni, even around the world. I think this is super important. We just cannot allow this to happen. We cannot allow the world's biggest corporation to buy a people's culture and destroy it. That's, I think, it's just, I don't know, it's just unacceptable, and we have to win. So that's my involvement. Yeah.
You keep going, girl. You on the right track. What you just talked about now sounds sacrilegious. It's unbelievable. But thank you indeed. We will follow the story. Thank you indeed for your insights. Lovely talking with you. Stay safe. God
Lovely
bless.
talking with you. Thank you so much, Julie. Take care.
It is exactly 8:58 news and views on this Monday morning with me, Julie Ali. In a minute or two after our ad breaks, we're going to be joining Zai Jadwat, our news correspondent, with a bulletin of the day. So please do stay with us. And I do hope you're going to become a part of the conversation. Would love to hear from you.